What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, take a bunch of videos, combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about the Mutant Massacre. The Mutant Massacre was the first X-Men crossover ever done in Marvel Comics in the 1980s. And of course, they used the main three X-Men titles around that time: Uncanny X-Men, New Mutants, and also X-Factor. Now, other titles were used as a way to expand on the story. So like the Mighty Thor series, Daredevil, and also Power Pack. But all of these different books came together to tell one overarching storyline, better known as the Mutant Massacre. Now, we covered every single issue of this crossover, and it was about 4 different videos. But now we're going to put all 4 videos together to tell you the complete story of the Mutant Massacre. I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so I kind of want to sit down and actually cover the first actual crossover that was ever done in X-Men comics. Now, when I say crossover, I really mean more of the first X-Men crossover, using all the different X-Men titles around that time to tell one single story arc. And that would be Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, New Mutants. You also have some other books as well, like Power Pack, Thor, and also Daredevil. But this was the first time we had an actual X-Men crossover, better known as the Mutant Massacre. Now, this was huge, and the reason why, because we got a brand new group of bad guys going into the tunnels of the Morlocks, and of course, killing off a huge chunk of them. Now remember, when it comes to the Morlocks, they were a group of mutants who were technically living in the sewers. And the reason why? Because of their appearance. Because sometimes when it comes to being a mutant, you may look normal, but you do have powers. But in some cases, you might get powers, but your body appearance will also change as well as soon as your X gene is activated. And so when it came to the Morlocks, literally all of them, except like maybe a handful, all look different, and they all began to live in the sewers, away from the humans, but also away from other mutants as well. But there's a new group out there known as the Marauders. For some unknown reason, they were sent into the sewers to kill off the Morlocks. And so getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with 2 characters, which will be Richard and Tommy. Now, unfortunately, this is going to be Richard's only appearance ever in Marvel Comics. And the reason why? Because, well, he's going to die right here in the opening pages of this story arc. Now, when it comes to Richard, he is struck from behind by some kind of blast. Now, he's not dead, but he is on the verge of dying. But he does tell Tommy to hand over his weapon, because he believes as long as he has his weapon, he should be able to fight against the people who is trying to kill him off. And of course, it is the Marauders. Now, when it comes to Richard, he's not really a Morlock. Matter of fact, he works for the Hellfire Club. But either way, though, he just been killed off by the Marauders. Now, when it comes to Tommy, she does run off thinking that she'll be able to get away from the people who is trying to kill her off. Now, when it comes to Tommy, she does have the mutant ability to change her body into a 2D shape. Literally, she goes flat like a 2D shape to be able to squeeze through tight doors if she needs to. Now, she is actually a Morlock, but either way, after seeing her friend Richard get killed, she's trying her best to get away. Now, luckily for her, she is able to sneak onto a train where she does believe that she should be possibly safe. We then jump over to Dazzler. Now, when it comes to Dazzler, I do want to mention that at this point in time, she's still a pop star, but not as big as she used to be. Because originally, she was a big time pop star when she first appeared in Marvel Comics. Except when the world found out that she was a mutant, well, we already know what happened there. She lost her popularity. Now, she was able to join a new group, but of course, she used a fake name as a way to hide her true identity, to also hide that she is a mutant, but to also still have the ability to perform. Now, when it comes to Dazzler, while she's in the bathroom, that is the moment where she is confronted by a character known as Malice. Now, when it comes to Malice, she's really more a mutant that's pure energy. She has to take over somebody's body if she wants to be able to actually walk around and do things in the world. But of course, at this point in time, she is a bad guy who's also part of the Marauders. And for some reason, she was sent after Dazzler. And so while you have Dazzler in the bathroom just minding her business, well, out of nowhere, she gets attacked by Malice, who tries to take over her body. We then pick up with Rogue, who is currently trying to find Rachel Summers, the daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey from an alternate timeline. Now, when it comes to Rogue, the reason why she is trying to find Rachel is because in the previous story arc, matter of fact, the one that came before this one, the X-Men fought against Nimrod. Now, at the end of that battle, Rachel just went missing, and they have no idea where in the world she had went off to. And so it's Rogue trying her best to find Rachel. Now, the rest of the section, when it comes to Rogue looking for Rachel, is honestly not that important. As a matter of fact, when it comes to Rogue, she does some superhero stuff here and there, but she also goes to the mall to, buy a few outfits, get her makeup done, but then she gets run out of the mall because she is a mutant. And really, that's it for Rogue at this point in the storyline. But when we jump over to Colossus, and matter of fact, he's back at the X Mansion, we kind of find out that Rachel is not the only person missing. Matter of fact, when Colossus talks to his little sister Illyana, we kind of find out that Nightcrawler is also missing as well, thanks to the battle against Nimrod in the previous story arc. And so currently, Illyana is very worried about Nightcrawler and Rachel, but it's also Colossus saying that, don't worry, sooner or later, we're going to find them. But when we check up with Kitty Pryde, we kind of find out that she is trying to turn Cerebro back on. But when you have Colossus and Illyana walk into the room, we are actually informed about the idea that Kitty Pryde is very upset at Rachel because she believes that Rachel had left the team in the middle of the battle against Nimrod. And so for Kitty, that's a huge no-no because the X-Men went out of their way to help Rachel, even though Rachel should not be in this timeline at all. But at the same time, they're still good people. They took her in. And then in Nimrod, she had left the team behind in the middle of that battle. And so for Kitty Pryde, she's very upset with Rachel because she believes that Rachel could be the reason why that Nightcrawler could possibly be dead. But now we have to talk about X Factor. See, when it came to X Factor, they were a new group around this point in time in Marvel Comics. And matter of fact, when it came to X Factor, it was the original 5 X-Men coming back together to make their own team. Cyclops, Angel, Beast, Iceman, Jean Grey. Now, the reason why they came together to make a new team is because they felt like the new X-Men team were no longer trying to follow Charles Xavier's dream. And so they made their own team to make sure his dream comes to life. Now, when it comes to X Factor, they also pretend to be mutant hunters. Because they look like humans, they try to pretend to be mutant hunters to go after mutants, but in reality, they're helping those mutants get away and somewhere safe. But either way, though, they're trying their best to be the better version of the X-Men around this point in time to, again, make sure that Charles Xavier dream comes to life. And so you have X Factor currently in New York in front of the Hellfire Club's place. But they also see Magneto walking into the place. And this leads into our next conversation, which is Magneto. See, when it comes to Magneto, around this point in time, he was actually a good guy. Matter of fact, he was the leader of the X-Men, the leader of the school. He was the headmaster of the school. Charles Xavier stepped down. And this was a huge thing for X-Men comics because it really showed a huge character development for Magneto around this point in time. Now, when it comes to Magneto, he's having a meeting with the Hellfire Club because in the previous story arc, it wasn't just Nimrod the X-Men fought against, they also fought against the Hellfire Club as well. Either way though, when it comes to Magneto, he finds out that he was called here by Sebastian Shaw, the leader of the Hellfire Club. And the reason why, because Sebastian Shaw feels like the way America is going when it comes to mutants, the X-Men and the Hellfire Club should join forces to basically defend themselves against the American government and their hatred towards the mutant race. Now, you already know when it comes to Magneto, he's not down with the idea of working with the Hellfire Club, especially right after what happened in the previous story arc. But then we jump over to Colossus, Kitty, and also Illyana, where we kind of find out that they were able to locate Nightcrawler thanks to Cerebro. Now here comes the problem though, because when they do find Nightcrawler, he is alive, except he's being chased after by a group of people who basically hate him because, once again, he is a mutant, but also because he looks like a demon. And so they are chasing him down. Now, luckily for Nightcrawler, Colossus, Kitty, and also Illyana appear just in time to save his life. Now, it does lead into the usual X-Men conversation where you have one of the X-Men basically talk about the idea of how wrong it is to go after someone because they are different, because they're not just like you. And of course, you have the crowd how to fight back against the X-Men, but they do back down once you have Kitty Pryde continue on with her speech. Now, once they do leave, you do have the X-Men take Nightcrawler back over to the mansion to hopefully get him healed up. Now, when we do pick up with Wolverine and Storm, we kind of find out the real reason why Rachel is currently missing. And we kind of find out that Wolverine had to stop Rachel in the previous story arc because she was trying to kill off the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. Now, he does feel bad about the idea of harming her, but he had no choice. And when it comes to Storm, she said, no, you made the right choice, because Rachel was going to kill off the Black Queen. And we as X-Men, we have to realize that killing is wrong. And so, of course, she tells Wolverine that what he did in the previous story arc to stop Rachel was not the wrong move at all. But then we have to pick up with Tommy. Now remember, Tommy was the character we saw earlier that was on the run trying to get away from the Marauders who were trying to kill her and her friend Richard. Now they did kill off her friend Richard, but she was still able to get away. Well, she thought she did, because as soon as she arrived to the Morlock tunnels, the Marauders come from behind, killing her off. And of course, they're not done yet. They're going to continue their killing spree by going after the rest of the Morlocks. Now, when we jump into X Factor number 9, the second chapter 2, the Mutant Massacre, we do pick up with Freedom Force. Now, when it comes to Freedom Force, they were a very interesting team in Marvel Comics. Now, most of the members of this team was actually part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants: Mystique, Pyro, Blob, Destiny, and Avalanche. Now, Spider-Woman Julia Carpenter is also part of this team, but the thing was, originally she was not. It was just these characters. Now, the reason why they're called Freedom Force, because they work for the government. And so basically, the government told them, if you work for us, we'll go ahead and clear you for all your past crimes. And so they were down. But they have to go after different power beings the government wants them to bring in. And currently they're going after two particular people. and that would be Rusty and Sally. Now, these were newer characters in Marvel Comics. As a matter of fact, they have not even got their code names yet. Now, when it comes to Sally, later on in Marvel Comics, she'll be called Skids. And when it comes to Rusty, he'll be called Fire Fist. Now, when it comes to Rusty, with his name Fire Fist, you already know that he is able to control fire. But on top of that, he is able to make himself light on fire as well, very similar to the Human Torch. And when it comes to Skid, she's kind of able to create different kinds of force fields. Now, when it comes to Freedom Force, they're trying to arrest Rusty, but to also arrest Skid. Really, they just want Rusty. They don't want Sally at all, but she's just there to protect the man that she cares for. Now, when we do jump over to X Factor, they're trying their best to actually find, well, Rusty. Now, when it comes to this issue, even though it's part of the Mutant Massacre storyline, it's also picking up from a previous issue where Rusty was on the run from Freedom Force. Either way, when it comes to X Factor, they're trying their best to find him. Now, the reason why I want to cover this section right here is to really show you guys that when it came to X Factor, the world believed that they were a group of a group of humans who were going out of their way to hunt down mutants. But in reality, they were a group of mutants trying to help out their fellow mutants get somewhere better for their lives. Now, with that being said, we also kind of find out a lot of their fans around this point in time did not even like other superheroes as well. And so when they looked at X Factor, they believed it was just 5 regular humans using technology as a way to hunt down mutants. But in reality, they're helping mutants out. But getting back over to Rusty and Sally, who are currently trying their best to get away from Freedom Force, unfortunately, they do get caught up in Spider-Woman's web. And so with them being caught in her web and nowhere to go, it does look like Freedom Force might say mission accomplished, except something else happens. And that is the public. See, when it comes to most of the members of Freedom Force, well, they're mutants. Well-known mutants, and so you actually do have the public begin to attack Freedom Force. Now, even though they work for the government, it kind of shows how the public really does hate mutants a lot. It does not matter if mutants are working for the government at all. If you are a mutant, the public basically hates your guts. Now, luckily, X Factor had arrived in time, and Jean Grey does use her powers as a way to defend the Freedom Force team from being attacked by the crowd of people. Except with all that happening, Rusty and Sally were able to get away, and you have Sally take Rusty into the Morlock tunnels. Now, we do pick up with a character known as Artie. Now, when it comes to Artie, he was also a new character around this point in time in X Factor comics. And when it came to Artie, he had the ability to project different kind of images as a way to talk to people. Because unfortunately, when he gained his mutant ability, it did change his body appearance, but it also made him mute, but also he could not write either. And so he had to rely on his ability to project different images as a way to talk to people. But on top of that, he's also able to tap into other people's minds to see what's going on with them, but to also project what they have going on in their minds as well. And so when it comes to Artie, he was able to tap into the mind of his dear friend Rusty, because Artie, just like Rusty, was also a trainee at X Factor as well. And so once he realized that Rusty was in danger, he felt like he had to tell somebody, or at least go out of his way to help save his best friend Rusty. And once you have Artie being able to reach the Morlock tunnels, hoping to find Rusty. Well, he finds Leech instead. Now, when it comes to Leech, he's also a Morlock, but he has the mutant ability to technically cancel out other mutant abilities. So, for example, if you try to use your powers, they're not going to work around Leech. Now, with that being said, Leech realized that Artie is a kid just like him, except can't talk. And so you have Leech take Artie to go see Caliban. Now, when it comes to Caliban, he's also a Morlock, also a mutant, but he has the ability to detect other mutants nearby. Now, when it comes to our three characters, while they're getting the chance to know each other, they hear a loud scream. And this brings us back into the Mutant Massacre storyline, because Rusty and also Sally were able to find a dead body. And this reminds us that this is the Mutant Massacre storyline. Now, I do want to mention one thing. When it comes to the Mutant Massacre storyline, X-Factor and X-Men are both going to be in the tunnels, but they're going to be on opposite ends. They're not really going to run into each other at all in most of the chapters of this event. And so they have no idea the other team is actually in the tunnels as well. But it also kind of shows how crazy the tunnels are when it comes to the Morlocks' home underneath New York. Either way, getting back over to Rusty and Sally, Freedom Force was able to catch up to them. And, well, they're trying to arrest Rusty and Sally. Now, luckily for Rusty, you do have X-Factor arrive in their brand new suits around this point in time to fight against Freedom Force. And this fight does last for a few pages, but of course, it does give us a lot of action. And honestly, it's cool to see X-Factor kind of show that they have fought against these different kind of characters before, and so they know how to handle these different kind of characters so easily. And so you have X-Factor being able to defeat Freedom Force and send them home packing. Except there is one tiny problem though. Rusty does get injured in the middle of the battle between X-Factor and also Freedom Force. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he does tell Angel and Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, to go ahead and take Rusty back over to their base to give him some medical help. Now, Cyclops, Iceman, and Beast, they are going to stay behind. And the reason why? To find Artie. Remember, Artie came down to the sewers to hopefully find his best friend Rusty. We already know he didn't find Rusty, but something else happened when it came to Artie. And so we're kind of wondering if Artie is okay. Either way, when it comes to X-Factor, they got word that Artie was down here looking for Rusty. And so you have Cyclops, Iceman, and Beast said, we'll stay behind and continue to search for Artie. Now, when it comes to the next chapter, we do jump back over to Uncanny X-Men, where we do pick up with issue number 211, where we do pick up with the Marauders. Now, this is actually our first time seeing these characters. Earlier, we only saw them in the shadows, but now we get the chance to actually see them. Now, I'm not going to sit down here and go through every single character right now. All you need to know is that they are continuing their rampage through the Morlock tunnels. They're going after different members of the Morlocks and just killing them off left and right to really show us that this is really going to be a massacre. And the thing is, they're also mutants. And so it's kind of like, why in the world is this group right now going after their own race, but enjoying the idea of killing off people who belong to their own race? Now, we do jump back over to the X-Men. Now, when we do, it is currently the X-Men just at home minding their business, doing different things as a way to pass the day on. Except when it comes to Wolverine and Nightcrawler, while they're outside, they are confronted by a mole-like character who is technically a Morlock, who came all the way over here to ask the X-Men for help, to inform the X-Men what is currently happening in the tunnels right now with the Morlocks being killed off by the Marauders. Now, the X-Men do get confirmation when it comes to Psylocke, Betsy Braddock. Now, I do want to mention one thing. Around this time, she was actually just a random person at the mansion because she had not joined the X-Men, nor has she joined the New Mutants. It was kind of like wondering what to do with this character, but she does use her psychic abilities as a way to read the mind of the mole-like character to get confirmation that what he said earlier is actually true. The Morlocks are currently being attacked by the Marauders. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, they have not met the Marauders at all. They were a brand new team that were created for this particular event right here. Now, once the X-Men do get confirmation, they do use Illyana's powers to teleport right over to the Morlock tunnels to begin to take down the enemies in the actual tunnels. Now, as soon as the X-Men arrived in the tunnels, unfortunately, they are confronted by some members of the Marauders, which of course gives them an actual battle. Now, this battle does not last that long. Matter of fact, only lasts for about 3 pages. Now, when it comes to the X-Men, they were able to take out at least one of the members of the Marauders, but unfortunately, Nightcrawler got seriously injured. But the thing is, Nightcrawler hasn't truly healed up since his last battle against Nimrod. And so with him coming here to this mission, he wasn't technically ready for it yet. But of course, he did not want to let the X-Men down. Now, he was able to take out one of the members of the Marauders, but at the end of the day, he still got hurt. Seriously hurt. And so Illyana had to go back with Nightcrawler to the mansion. And you had the X-Men tell her, don't come back here, because if things are this bad here, you as a child are in the worst spot ever. So take Nightcrawler back to the mansion and give him some medical help. Now, you're wondering why Magneto is not here. Because he's the headmaster, Storm said he should stay behind to protect the other team at the mansion, the New Mutants, the younger group of kids. Now, the rest of the 3rd chapter is really more of the X-Men going down deeper into the tunnels to hopefully find some survivors. But unfortunately, they just keep running into different members of the Marauders. And so the X-Men have to fight their way to see if anybody has survived the attack of the Marauders. But the problem is, though, the Marauders, when they find somebody they want to kill, they make sure that person is actually dead. Now, there is a moment where you have Wolverine and Storm almost get hit by Cyclops' optic beam. Now, we're left to believe that Cyclops had no idea that Wolverine and Storm are down here in the tunnels, but at the same time, Wolverine knows now that Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman are here in the tunnels as well. But the question is, why? We're also left to believe that X-Factor and X-Men, there's some bad blood between the two teams, especially with the idea that X-Factor believes that the new X-Men team is not doing a good job when it comes to making sure that Charles Xavier's dream comes to life. Also, when it comes to X-Factor, they don't like the idea of the X-Men working alongside with Magneto. Either way, as the book continues on, you have the X-Men continue to fight against the Marauders. And matter of fact, when it comes to the final battle for today's video, we actually do pick up with the X-Men fighting against the Marauders once again. Except this time, I want to focus more on Rogue and Kitty Pryde. And the reason why, because one of the members of the Marauders, Harpoon, was going to shoot Rogue. Now, luckily for Rogue, Kitty Pryde stepped in to protect her, and so Kitty Pryde got shot. Now, Kitty Pryde is not dead or badly injured, but we come to find out that her powers are no longer working at all. She can no longer phase like she usually does. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to the X-Men, they can't really try to sit down and try to figure that out. They have other things to take care of, like the Marauders. And so you have Storm to the X-Men to go ahead and take all survivors back over to the mansion. But when they come back to the tunnels of the Morlock, Storm wants to find one of the members of the Marauders to interrogate. But the rest of the members of the Marauders is Storm saying, if you find someone else, you can go ahead and kill them off. And this is What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay guys, so we are going to continue our coverage over the Mutant Massacre. Now remember, the Mutant Massacre was the first ever X-Men crossover that was done in the year 1986. Now the whole point of this crossover was that a new group known as the Marauders went into the sewers of New York to kill off a group of mutants known as the Morlocks. Now remember, the Morlocks are a group of mutants who basically hide in the sewers because of their appearance. See, when it comes to most mutants, when their X gene is activated, they only get powers. Except when it came to the Morlocks, yes, they did get powers, but the X gene also changed their body appearance. And so, unfortunately, they were unable to live with the rest of the people of New York because the way they look. And also because the world really does hate mutants a lot. And so if you were a mutant that was not able to technically hide in public, you had nowhere else to go except into the sewers and join the Morlocks. But out of nowhere, this new team known as the Marauders, who are also mutants, but for some strange reason, they're really down with the idea of killing off the Morlocks. Now by this point of the story, we have no idea why the Marauders are down here, but on top of that, who are they working for? Now the next chapter that we are going to cover comes from X Factor number 10. Now I will remind you guys who X Factor is later on in this video, but I kind of want to give you another example of the idea of how ruthless and crazy the Marauders truly are, because we do pick up with the Morlocks, or another group of Morlocks who are currently minding their business, just trying to make dinner. Now at first they do hear a lot of screams and popping noise, but they have a hard time believing that those kind of sounds would be down here in the tunnels, except as some time passed by, they realize those sounds, those gunshots, those screams are getting closer and closer. And by the time this group realized, oh my gosh, we are being attacked, unfortunately this group of Morlocks do get attacked by the Marauders, and really most of the group is killed off just like that. But then we do transition over to X Factor. Now remember, when it came to X Factor in the early days of Marvel Comics, they were a different kind of team that most people really know of when it comes to the new readers of the current time of X Factor. And what I mean by that is, originally X Factor was the original 5 X-Men coming back together to make a new team. Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and Angel. Now when it came to their new team, they felt like the new X-Men began to do a horrible job trying to bring Charles Xavier's dream to life, with humans and mutants being able to live together. They also hated the idea that Magneto, who was a good guy, took over the school of Charles Xavier. And so when it came to X Factor, their main goal was to kind of, you know what, let's make a new team and let's really try to bring the dream of Charles Xavier to life. But on top of that, they also pretend to be a group of people who go out of their way to hunt mutants down. Now, it wasn't really them hunting down mutants. Their main goal was to help mutants get into better situations for their lives, to kind of learn how to control their powers and how to use their powers to make the world a better place. Now, when we do pick back up with X Factor, it does pick up the last time we saw them in this actual crossover, where they were trying to get one of their own back over to their base to kind of get that person patched up, and that would be Rusty. Now, Rusty would become down the road another X-Men character known as Fire Fist, but that's really it. Around this point in time, he was a trainee for X Factor, but in the last video, he got injured, and so X Factor is trying to get him back over to their base to give him some medical help. Now, you also have to remember, when it comes to the Mutant Massacre, both teams of the X-Men are currently down here. So you have the X-Men and you also have X-Factor. Now when it comes to these two teams, they're both down here, but they're on opposite ends. And so honestly, they're not going to run into each other at all. But they are going to run into the different members of the Marauders and try to stop them to also save the Morlocks. Now when it comes to X-Factor, they also have another reason, and that is the character Artie. Now Artie was a young mutant who was technically mute, and the only way he was able to communicate was using his abilities, where he is able to project different kind of images of things that he wanted to talk about. But on last video, he used his powers to realize that Rusty was in danger, and so he went down the sewers to hopefully find Rusty. Well, unfortunately, when he did get down into the sewers, well, he put himself in danger. And so X-Factor is trying to find him, but at the same time trying to get Rusty back over to their base to get medical help. Now you do have Angel and Jean Grey being able to get Rusty back over to the X-Factor base to give him some medical help. Now here comes the problem, Skid. And when it comes to Skid, she is a close friend of Rusty, but also she is a Morlock and a mutant who has the ability to create force fields. Either way, when it comes to Skid, she just finds out that Angel and Jean Grey are part of X-Factor, and to the public, X-Factor are a group of people who go out of their way to hunt down mutants. And so when she finds out that Angel and Jean Grey are technically part of X-Factor, she believes they go out of their way to hunt down their own kind. Now you do have Angel try his best to explain things to Skid, but unfortunately she's not listening. And so Jean Grey has to trap her in some kind of containment to how to help her calm down, so that once she's able to listen and realize the true purpose of X-Factor, then everything is going to be okay. Now, we do jump back down into the tunnels of the Morlocks, where we actually do pick up with Artie. He's the red looking character, who's also with Leech. Now, Leech is the other young boy who has the ability to cancel out other mutant powers. And on top of that, they're with Caliban, who also a mutant who has the ability to detect other mutants. Now, out of nowhere, they are attacked by Sabertooth. Now, they are able to kind of hide into a smaller tunnel, but of course they're also saved by Cyclops, Iceman, and Beast, who are looking for Artie. Now here's the thing, because when they do arrive, Artie, Leech, and also Caliban, they are able to hide into the small tunnel. And so of course X-Factor will realize that Artie is nearby. And so right after you have Cyclops use his optic beam to take out Sabertooth for a short period of time, they're all like, okay, you know what, Artie's not here, we have to continue to search for Artie. But on top of that, Artie doesn't realize that Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman were just there as well. And so of course you have our heroes continue on and try to search for their dear friend Artie. Now, real quick, we do jump over to Warren Warrington's company office. Now, Warren Warrington is, of course, Angel. And matter of fact, he has his own company, and he has been using his company's money as a way to fund X-Factor. Now, here's the thing, because he made sure there's no way nobody would be able to make that connection. Unfortunately, he didn't count for Mystique, who was part of Freedom Force. And because her and her team lost in our last video, she went out of her way to share that secret to the world. And this is really bad, because now Warren Warrington, who's better known as Angel, a well-known mutant who used to fight alongside with the X-Men, is now apparently going out of his way to fund X-Factor, another group of people who are well known for being out there to hunt down mutants. Why in the world would a mutant go out of his way and fund a group of people who go out of their way to hunt down mutants? And so this looks really bad for Warren Warrington and also X-Factor. Now, we do jump back over to Cyclops, Beast, and also Iceman, who are going out of their way in the Morlock tunnels to find Artie, but unfortunately, they do run into, well, some more Marauders. And we do get a couple pages of our heroes fighting against the Marauders, which at first, it is a good fight, but you can tell that this was technically used as a way to kind of give us some action, because it has been a while since we saw any big thing happening in this particular book. Either way, once you do have our heroes being able to go out of their way to defeat this group of Marauders, you do have our heroes let them leave, because their main goal again is to find Artie. Now we have to jump back over to Angel and Jean Grey. And this is kind of important. And the reason why, because around this point in time, Cyclops and Jean Grey were not together, because Jean Grey died in the Dark Phoenix saga, and so with her death, Cyclops moved on and married Madeline Pryor, and by this point they were deeply in love. Now, once Cyclops found out that Jean Grey was alive, he was happy but sad, because he could no longer be with the woman that he truly loved. Now, with all that being said, even though Jean Grey found out that Cyclops was married to someone else, she still loved him, but of course realized she could not be with him. But either way, they did put the team together. But Angel kind of feels bad for Jean Grey, but at the same time feels bad for Cyclops as well. And Cyclops is his best friend. But at the same time, Angel still kind of has some feelings for Jean Grey, to the point where we're kind of left to believe, even though we already know it's not going to happen, that Angel and Jean Grey could possibly get together, because Cyclops is married now. He moved on, and so she's a free agent, and so is Angel. Well, actually, Angel is not a free agent, because while you have Angel trying to cheer up Jean Grey because she's very worried for Iceman, Beast, and Cyclops, who are still down in the Morlock tunnels, well, Angel girlfriend walks in, Candy. Now, you would think, okay, Angel, your girlfriend just walked in and it looked really bad for you. She ran off. You should probably go chase after her to, make sure everything is okay. He does not do that. Instead, he runs back over to Jean Grey. It's kind of him just taking a huge gamble, hoping that everything is going to work out for him and Jean Grey. Now, we do jump over to a random Morlock, and her name is Plague. Now, when it comes to Plague, she's currently being attacked by two Morlocks. One of them is actually Sabertooth. As a matter of fact, she's able to take out Sabertooth very easily. But the other one is about to, well, kill her off. Now, luckily for her, she is saved by Apocalypse, who just appeared out of nowhere. But he does tell us that when it comes to the Marauders, they have done a great job by going out of their way, killing off all the different Morlocks who are technically weak. The strong has survived, and that helped him to realize who he should select to become one of his 4 horsemen. And so when it came to Plague, he was kind of like, I like her, and you know what, you can become one of my 4 horsemen, and they just leave just like that. Now, we do jump back over to Cyclops, Iceman, and Beast, who are still in the tunnels of the Morlocks. Unfortunately, they do run into more members of the Marauders. Now, of course, our heroes have been doing a great job fighting against these guys, but unfortunately, they do lose this time to this group of Marauders. Now, luckily for our heroes, the rest of their team had just came back to help them out, Angel and Jean Grey. Now, of course, with Cyclops, Beast, and also Iceman being somewhat injured, you have Angel tell Jean Grey to go ahead and get them back to the base of X Factor so that they are able to get some medical help, while you have Angel continue on to hopefully find Artie. But here comes the problem though, because you do have Angel being able to find Artie, which is a great thing. But unfortunately, as soon as he does find Artie, he realizes that he is surrounded by different members of the Marauders, who of course want to kill him off as well. And so you do have Angel being able to hold his own against these guys, but unfortunately, there's too many of them. And so Angel does lose the battle. And matter of fact, they pinned him to the wall by his wings to kind of show that they're just going around killing off people left and right and hurting anybody who tries to stand in their way. Now, the next chapter we do pick up with the New Mutants, with New Mutants issue number 46. Now, probably at first you did not see this coming, but remember, in the 1980s, there were 3 different X-Men titles. Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, and New Mutants. But, of course, New Mutants came in the very middle of this actual crossover, part 5. Now, when it comes to the New Mutants, remember, these are the newest characters to the world of X-Men who are technically still learning how to use their powers and how to be a superhero team, technically. Now, when it comes to New Mutants, they're kind of freaking out. And the reason why? Because of the pet dragon that belongs to Kitty Pryde, Lockheed. Now, when it comes to Lockheed, apparently he's going a tad bit crazy. And so you do have the New Mutants trying to go after him to kind of, calm him down before he does more damage to the actual place. Now, I do want to focus on the character known as Dani Moonstar. Now, around this point in time, Dani Moonstar was the leader of the New Mutants, but she also gained a new ability from a Valkyrie in an earlier storyline. Now, when it came to the ability she gained from Valkyrie, she was able to kind of see death in different kind of ways. And usually when she sees death, that tells her that somebody's going to die sooner or later. And that's kind of really important because you're now talking about the idea of kind of knowing when you or your friends could possibly die. Now, we do jump over to Muir Island. Now, when we do, you already know why, because we pick up with Moira McTaggart. Now, remember, Moira McTaggart around this point in time in Marvel Comics was just a regular human, and that was it. I mean, yes, she did go out of her way to help Charles Xavier out to kind of help him understand how other mutant powers basically work. But again, she was just a human before Jonathan Hickman came in and did a complete change to the character. Now, with all that being said, she is confronted by Magic. Now, remember, Magic is the little sister to Colossus, Illyana. Either way, the reason why she is here is to get Moira McTaggart's help for some unknown reason. Now, while you have the two characters try to teleport back over to the X Mansion, because when it comes to Magic, she has to go through limbo to teleport to places, sometimes she may go back in time a tad bit. And so she has to wait in limbo until time is able to catch up to itself so that she is able to re-enter the main Marvel Universe timeline without kind of, destroying time. But she does tell Moira McTaggart the reason why she did teleport over here is for a very important reason. And that would be the X-Men, because remember, the X-Men got word about what was happening when it came to the Morlocks, and so they ran over to help the Morlocks fight against the Marauders. Now, unfortunately, the X-Men were not completely healed from their last battle against Nimrod, and so unfortunately, when they try to go help the Morlocks, Nightcrawler got injured again, but on top of that, Kitty Pryde powers is not working properly because she was hit from behind by one of the members of the Marauders. Now, with that happening, she's now kind of unable to control her phasing abilities. Now, something else to mention is that the X-Men were able to find some survivors of the Morlocks and bring them back over to the X Mansion. Now, Storm does tell the New Mutants, but also Moira McTaggart, they left Wolverine behind. Not really for a bad reason, only because Wolverine is going to find one of the members of the Marauders to bring in so the X-Men are able to interrogate them to learn more about their actual group. But either way, you have Moira McTaggart realize that there are a lot of people who are severely injured. And so it's up to her, the New Mutants, and also Magneto, who again is the one in charge of the school, to begin the process of trying to help out the different people, the different survivors of the Morlocks. Now, while you do have our heroes trying their best to help out the Morlocks, you do have Sunspot kind of remind us that when it comes to his abilities, or for him to use his abilities, he has to be charged up by solar energy. And that's a problem right there, because we see that it's been a while since he has been able to be charged up by solar energy. And so because of that, he is unable to carry different things alongside with Colossus, and he almost dropped something that is very important in saving the lives of the Morlocks. Now, when it comes to Magneto, he does get very angry at Sunspot for not being careful, and that right there really does tick off Sunspot a lot, to the point where he does run up the stairs and he goes into the kitchen and he kind of tried to express how angry he truly is. Now, once he's able to see a sandwich, he feels like he has the right to eat the sandwich. Now, he is stopped by Wolfbane, another member of the New Mutants, who tells him that the sandwiches are for the survivors of the Morlocks. And that right there kind of ticks him off a whole lot, to the point where he does call Wolfbane a bunch of names, and it does lead into an argument that does begin the process of the possibility of the two characters might fight against each other. Now, luckily, you do have the rest of the New Mutants come in to stop the two from fighting against each other, because right now their main focus should be helping out the Morlocks, the survivors, because what they went through is a whole lot worse than what the New Mutants are currently going through. Now, we do jump over to two characters, Karma and Magic. Now, when it comes to Karma, she does express that she's very worried about her brother and sister, because by this point in time, they should be home right now. And the problem is, though, when she calls their apartment, they're not home. And so she's very worried about her siblings. And so she does ask Magic to use her abilities to teleport over there to check up on her brother and sister. Now, when Karma and Magic arrive, well, unfortunately, no one is home. And on top of that, all the lights have been turned off. That is very important, because as soon as you have Karma go over to a switch to turn the lights on, we see an explosion, and we're left to believe the possibility that Karma and Magic could possibly be dead. Now, you do have the rest of the New Mutants get word what happened to Magic and also Karma. Not the idea that, an apartment just blew up. It's really more the idea that their two team members just left, and now they're unable to get a hold of them when they call the apartment that belongs to Karma's brother and sister. And so because of that, you have our heroes wondering what should they do. And they know they can't go ask the X-Men, because currently the X-Men are trying to deal with the Marauders and save the Morlocks. And so you have the New Mutant decide they should go out of their own way to go help out and find their missing two team members. Now, here's the thing though, because as soon as our heroes leave, we kind of find out there is a Morlock tunnel that runs underneath the school but leads straight back over into the city. Now, this could be a huge problem, because if the Morlocks use the same tunnel, they will be able to head right over to the school of Charles Xavier. But for right now, we're just going to focus on the New Mutants. And so they begin to use the tunnel as a way to get into New York to check up on Karma and also Magic. Now, while they're leaving, they have no idea they're being followed by Magnus, a character better known as a Technarch. Now, a Technarch is an alien race better known as techno-organic life. Oh, and the reason why he is here is for his son Warlock, who is also a Technarch. Now, when it comes to Warlock, he is a member of the New Mutants, but again, not a mutant. He is a Technarch. Now, when it comes to Magnus, apparently he's very upset with his son. And the reason why, because back on their home world, they were supposed to have a huge battle, but unfortunately Warlock ran away scared to do battle with his father Magnus. And so ever since then, Magnus has been trying to get Warlock and bring him back to their home world so that they are able to do battle. But of course, right now it seems like he's once again trying to find a way to battle against his son. But getting back onto the New Mutants, they do arrive in New York City after using the tunnels that belong to the Morlocks. Now, apparently, as they went through the tunnels, they saw what the Marauders did to the Morlocks. There were death everywhere, and seeing so many different dead bodies, it really bothered the New Mutants a lot. Now, when they do arrive in the city, they do see the apartment building that belongs to Karma's brother and sister. And so once they do see the apartment building is on fire, they believe their two team members are basically dead. Now, luckily for our heroes, they do come to find Magic and also Karma has survived the explosion, and they were able to get out using the side entrance. Either way, it's a very good moment to realize that no one had died here at all. And matter of fact, when it comes to Danny Moonstar and her new ability to see death, it shows that technically no one's going to die right now. But there is still a possibility that somebody could die later on. Now, for our heroes, they're going to have to hold off on their celebration. And the reason why? Because of Warlock. Because he begins to freak out. And the reason why? Because he does detect his father nearby. And so he does try to flee alongside with the other members of the New Mutants. Now, when it comes to Warlock, he does not tell his fellow team members what in the world is currently going on. He just grabs them and tries to get away. But unfortunately, they are confronted by Magnus, who again is trying to get revenge against his son and bring his son back over to their home world. Now, the next chapter we're going to cover is Thor number 373. Now, when it comes to this particular chapter of Mutant Massacre, most of the chapter is really more Thor kind of handling things that don't really deal with anything at all when it comes to the Mutant Massacre. And so I'm going to skip over a lot of content to the point where we actually jump to the very end of this actual chapter. And really, when it comes to Thor chapter, the only thing that really matters is that Thor does get word of what was happening down in the sewers, the Morlock tunnels. And so you do have Thor go down there to figure out what in the world is currently going on. Now, when he does arrive, well, he comes to find out the Morlocks are being killed off by the Marauders. But he also hears a particular scream that belongs to somebody that he actually knows. And that would be, well, no other than Angel. This is where we pick up where the X Factor chapter left off at, where Angel was technically tortured by some members of the Morlocks and he was hung on the wall by his wings. And so you do have Thor go down there to, fight against the Marauders, but to also begin the process of trying to help out Angel. And this is where we are going. What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over the Mutant Massacre. Now, we do pick up with 3 more chapters. Now, I do want to tell you guys, the next 2 chapters we're going to cover in this video are going to be non-X-Men title books. So, for example, the first chapter is going to be a Power Pack book, and the next one is going to be another Thor chapter, and then we jump back into X-Men to see Sabertooth fight against Wolverine for the first time. But when it comes to the Mutant Massacre, you have to remember that this was the first X-Men crossover ever done in X-Men comics, with all the X-Men titles plus some other titles as well. And when it came to the Mutant Massacre, the whole point of the storyline was that you had a new team known as the Marauders go into the tunnels, the sewers that belong to the Morlocks, and begin to kill off Morlocks left and right. Now remember, Morlocks were a group of mutants who lived in the sewers because of how they they look. When it comes to being a mutant, most mutants, when their X gene is activated, they only gain powers and that is it. But in some cases, some mutants, their bodies actually change their body appearance. And so when it came to the Morlocks, they realized that they would be unable to live on the surface level because of the way they look. They'll be hated on and attacked non-stop. And so they went to live in the sewers as a whole group. Either way, when it comes to the Marauders, they are another group of mutants that came into the tunnels of the Morlocks to kill them off, and we have no idea why yet. Now, like I said earlier, the first chapter we're going to cover today is going to be a power pack chapter. Now, before I dive into today's video, I do want to mention, if you want to go back and watch the other videos to get caught up on what the whole event is all about, I will put a link down below to a playlist, but also previous videos to kind of help you get a better understanding of what's happening so far in the Mutant Massacre. Now, the first chapter for today's video comes out of Power Pack number 27. Now, when it comes to Power Pack, they were a group of children that were given powers by an alien. This alien was going to die, and so it had decided to pass on its powers to these 4 children. Now, when it comes to the children's parents, they do have some concerns about the idea of their kids having powers and being heroes, but at the same time, they're kind of okay with it. Now, around this point in time, Franklin Richards, the son of Reed and Susan from the Fantastic Four, was also living with the Power Pack as well, while the Fantastic Four were missing on one of their many adventures. Either way, he's now technically part of the Power Pack. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain every single character of the Power Pack because, unfortunately, it'll take a lot of time, and honestly, they're not that important when it comes to the overall story of the Mutant Massacre. Now, the way you have the Power Pack get involved in the actual event is all because of Franklin Richards. When you have the children go to sleep for, the night, well, Franklin begins to dream about what is currently happening in the tunnels of the Morlocks. Of course, the Marauders going around and killing off mutants left and right. Now, here's the thing though, because when it comes to Franklin Richards, even though he is dreaming about that, it's actually happening. And so he is able to see what is currently happening in the sewers, but he's also able to project images in the middle of the room to show the Power Pack what he is currently dreaming, but in reality what he is seeing right now down in the sewers. Now, one of the things he does project is Leech. Leech is a young Morlock in the tunnels who has the ability to cancel out other people's powers. Either way, you have Franklin right now projecting an image of Leech, who's currently holding his dear friend Caliban, who was seriously injured in a previous chapter. And so once you have all the members of the Power Pack come into the room and see what Franklin is projecting while he is still asleep, they realize their good friend Leech could most likely be in trouble. And so they wake up Franklin and they decide it's time for another adventure and go down there to save their friend, but to also stop the bad guys. But they have no idea that they're about to get into the middle of one heck of an ugly event. And so, as soon as you have the Power Pack get into the tunnels of the Morlocks, well, they realize that they had just stepped into a massacre. They see dead bodies everywhere. Now, while you have our heroes continue on to hopefully find Leech, well, they run into Sabertooth. Now, Sabertooth is the perfect example of what the Marauders were truly like around this point in time. And what I mean by that is the Marauders were killing off anybody who was in their path. They were not just killing off men and women. They were also killing off children as well. If you were a Morlock in the tunnels, you were going to die by their hands. If you were just some random person that had walked into the sewers, you're going to die by their hands. And so when it comes to Sabertooth, when he finds the power pack, he doesn't care if they're Morlocks or not. They're in the sewers and they have to die. Now, luckily for our heroes, they were able to use their powers to get away from Sabertooth. But on top of that, there's something else I have to mention. When it came to the power pack around this point in time, they have their powers change over to each other. So different members have different powers they're not used to having. Either way, they were able to adapt and get lucky to get away from Sabertooth. But again, he is the most perfect example of what the Marauders are truly like, because he was going to kill off those kids if he could. Now, while you have the power pack trying to get away from Sabertooth, matter of fact, they're trying to put some distance between him and them, they do run into Wolverine. Now, they know Wolverine very well, but he's very upset about the idea of these kids being down here while this massacre is currently happening. Now, I also want to mention, look at Wolverine's outfit. It kind of shows that after you had his X-Men team leave to take survivors back over to the X-Men, that he was left here down the tunnels to hopefully find one Marauder to grab so that it'll be a hostage the X-Men can interrogate. But I'm guessing Homeboy had went through a lot of battles where his costume got ripped up a lot. Either way, you do have Wolverine tell the power pack, get the heck out of here. This is no place for children at all. You will get killed if you stay down here. Leave right now. And you have Wolverine run off, and we already know that most likely he is going to run into Sabertooth. Now, while you have the power pack continue on, they find more dead bodies. Unfortunately, they find the dead body of Anna Lee. Now, when it comes to Anna Lee, she was kind of like the mother to a lot of children in the Morlocks, especially Leech. And so now our heroes know if they do find their dear friend Leech, they have to tell him, your mother is dead. Now, we do pick up with X Factor. Now remember, X Factor was a new idea, a new team around this point in time in Marvel Comics. And when it came to X Factor, it was the original 5 X-Men coming back together to make their own team, because they felt like the new X-Men were not doing a good job when it came to making sure that Charles' dream came to life. The idea of humans and mutants living together. Also, they hated the idea of Magneto taking over the school and having Charles Xavier stepping down. And so when it came to X Factor, they want to make sure that Charles' dream does live on to the point where it could possibly succeed. Now, something else I do want to mention is Cyclops and Jean Grey. And the reason why, because we have to remember, at this point in time, Cyclops is married, but not to Jean Grey. He's married to Madeline Pryor. On top of that, they have a child together, but he left his family to come over here to make the X Factor team to hopefully make Charles Xavier dream come to life. But at the same time, it's Jean Grey, you know, she knows that Cyclops moved on and also got married because he believed that she was dead. But at the same time, it's still her kind of hoping that maybe the two of them can get back together. Either way, when we do jump back over to them, it's really them and the rest of their team bringing back more survivors of the Morlocks back over to their X Factor base. But you have Cyclops wanting to go back into the sewers to hopefully find one of their lost friends, Artie. But getting back over to Power Pack, they're still looking for their dear friend Leech. Even though Wolverine told them, get the heck out of here, they're more of, no, we came down here with a mission. We're gonna find our lost friend Leech. And so you do have the young heroes continue on. Unfortunately, they run into some more Marauders. Now again, they are also perfect examples, just like Sabertooth to show that when it came to the Marauders, they didn't care if you were a child or an adult or old, they didn't care. You were going to die. And so when it came to the Power Pack, they realized they had no choice but to go ahead and use their powers to fight against the different members of the Marauders. Now, luckily, when it came to the Power Pack, they were able to use their powers to defeat the different members of the Marauders that they were currently facing. But after winning the battle, they find Leech. But then it gets into a very sad moment, because that is the moment where you have the Power Pack tell Leech that his mother is dead. The person that he looked at like a mother is no longer around. It's heartbreaking for Leech. This is a young boy who had lost what was his mother. Now, with that being said though, when it comes to X Factor, when they come back to the tunnels and come to where Power Pack and Leech are at, they just overheard what has happened to Leech, that his mother is dead. And that breaks Cyclops' heart a lot, because he knows what it is like to basically lose a parent. And so unfortunately, he's very upset for Leech as well. He tries his best to comfort Leech. Now, right after that, you did have Power Pack leave, but you do have Cyclops tell Iceman and Beast to take more survivors back over to their base, the X Factor base, while Jean Grey and him continue on to hopefully find Artie. And I'll explain who Artie is, just in case you may forgot, in the next chapter. But either way, it's Cyclops saying, this is why we are around. This is why X Factor is here for, to help out mutants in need. And right now, there are a lot of mutants in these tunnels who are in need for our help. So let's go down there, find Artie, and help out the other mutants we can help out. Now, the next chapter we have to cover comes from Thor number 374, where we do pick up with Thor where we left off at last time with this character, where he had found Angel severely injured and being hung against the wall by his wings. And so you have Thor trying to get Angel off the wall, but unfortunately Thor is confronted by more members of the Marauders. And so it does lead into another battle for our hero against the Marauders. Now, when it comes to their battle, Thor is struggling at first, but by the end of the section, he will be able to actually defeat them. But here's the thing though, guys, because while Thor was fighting against them and struggling, this begins the process of us realizing there's something wrong with Thor. And unfortunately, we're not going to know until the very end of this chapter. But either way, you do have Thor being able to defeat the members of the Marauders and then begin the process of taking Angel off the wall and try to take him somewhere to get some medical help. Now, we do pick up with some members of the Marauders, Sabertooth, Blockbuster, and I forgot the third character, but honestly, he's not important because the only thing he says is that Blockbuster is very upset about the idea of losing to Thor. And so right after they had lost their battle against Thor, you had these three characters meet up somewhere else, and you have Sabertooth kind of upset that he was not there with a chance to fight against Thor, but Blockbuster, his mind is somewhere else, because he is constantly thinking about the idea of how he lost to Thor. He hates the idea of losing. And so he gets back up to hopefully find Thor to have a round two. But getting back over to Thor, you have Thor currently holding on to Angel and trying to find a way out of the tunnels. Now, he is confronted by Artie. Now, this is where I'm going to remind you who Artie is, just in case you possibly forgot or you're new to the series. When it comes to Artie, he was also an X Factor trainee. He was in training to join the X Factor team. But in the earlier chapters of the series or this event, Artie left the base of X Factor to save his close friend Rusty. Now, something to remember about Artie is that he is completely mute, and the only way he is able to communicate is using his powers, where he is able to project different images as a way to show what he is talking about, or of course his hands. Now, when it comes to Artie, he tells Thor that the reason why he came down here was to save his friend Rusty, but now he's also looking for other members of X Factor because he sees Angel, who's severely injured but on the back of Thor. Either way, you have Thor tell Artie to stay close with him and they'll all get out of here very soon. Except that is the moment where you have Blockbuster appear. Now, when Blockbuster does appear, this is him wanting a rematch against Thor. And like I said earlier, there's something wrong with Thor. And the reason why? Because he is struggling when it comes to fighting against Blockbuster. But on top of that, Blockbuster was able to break the arm of Thor. And that is very important for the very end of this chapter. Either way, luckily for Thor, Angel and Artie were kind of being able to distract Blockbuster long enough for Thor to give one heck of a blow to knock out Blockbuster to win the battle. But either way, Thor's arm is broken, but he says, I have to continue on. I have to get this kid, Artie, and also Angel the heck out of here before any more members of the Marauders appear and possibly kill all three of them. Now, it does not take Thor that long to be able to find other members of X Factor. Matter of fact, he finds Cyclops and Jean Grey just like that. Now, when it comes to Cyclops and Jean Grey, they realize that Angel is severely injured. And so their goal is to get Angel back over to their base to give them some medical help. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he's also very concerned about Thor. And the reason why, because he's concerned that Thor might hear some horrible things about mutants, but also X Factor. And so he's afraid if Thor does hear that information, he might try to come after X Factor or other mutants. But you have Thor say, but I won't do that because I know who you are. We have fought alongside with one another in the earlier days of Marvel Comics. Matter of fact, how is your professor, Charles Xavier? It really shows that Thor does remember the X-Men, or at least the original X-Men, very well, and on top of that, somewhat cares for them. He even says, I don't try to have or try to use other people's opinions when it comes to judging somebody. I try to use my own opinions and try to see what I truly feel like when it comes to a particular person. But I already know who you are, Cyclops and Jean Grey and Angel. I know that you are good people. So go ahead and leave. Take little Artie with you as well, because I'm going to give the dead Morlocks a Viking funeral. I am going to burn their bodies here right now and say that this is going to be their burial site. Now, before Thor is able to give the Morlocks a Viking funeral, well, that is the moment where he is confronted by Hela. And when it comes to Hela, she tells Thor, listen, the reason why your arm was so easily broken earlier is because I cast a spell on you. And that spell was to make you more mortal than you ever were before. And so now you, my dear friend Thor, can get hurt very easily. Now you could think the reason why she did this is because she wants to kill off Thor. But in reality, that is not the case. She wants to have Thor suffer and beg for death because she says, oh, I made sure that you cannot die. So no matter what, if you broke a leg, an arm, or a rib, you cannot die. You will just continue on with your broken bones and they'll heal back up. But again, they'll be broken again down the road. But you can never die. I want to make you beg for death. And so Thor goes on with the Viking funeral, but now he realized he has to be more careful. And so getting into the next chapter, we do pick up with Uncanny X-Men number 212. Now this is the book where you have Wolverine and Sabertooth fight for the first time ever in Marvel Comics. This was their first battle in comic history. Now, with that being said, while you have Wolverine currently in the Morlock tunnels trying to find a Marauder to bring back over to the mansion so that the X-Men will be able to interrogate that Marauder, you have Wolverine also down with the idea of killing off the rest of the team of the Marauders after he is able to get the one he needs to interrogate. Now, while going through the tunnels and finding many more dead bodies, he's also contacted by Psylocke. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, of course, the reason why she is contacting Wolverine through his mind is to get a report. Storm wants to know if Wolverine was able to find a Marauder to bring back to interrogate. Now, you do have Wolverine say no, but at the same time, he also tells Psylocke to tell Storm and the others that when he's down here, is going to make sure the Marauders pay for what they have done to all these innocent Morlocks. And then the call ends on that note right there. But getting back over to the mansion, we do get reminded that the X-Men were able to grab survivors and bring them back over to the mansion, very similar to what X-Factor did with their survivors. They took their survivors back over to their base, and when it came to the X-Men, back to their base. Now, at the X-Mansion, you also have Moira McTaggart there, who is trying her best to play doctor and save the lives of survivors of the Morlocks. Unfortunately, they're dying off left and right, and the reason why? One, the X-Men and Moira McTaggart do not have the proper equipment to save lives, but two, a lot of the Morlocks' injuries were very severe, and so unfortunately, without the right equipment and the right kinds of doctors, these survivors are just dying off left and right. It's very grim. Now, when it comes to Storm, she's very upset with what she is seeing. Now, this was Chris Claremont doing a thing around this time where Storm lost her powers, but also she felt like she was no longer a great leader, that she was a failure. She put a lot of pressure on herself, and with the idea of Nightcrawler not being healed up right now, Kitty Pryde not being able to stop phasing, and also Colossus injuries and Rogue's injuries, she feels like she is a failure as the leader of the X-Men. But also because the Morlocks got seriously injured as well, and she was also their leader around this time as well. And so you have her just walk away very upset. Now you do have Colossus wanting to follow her to make sure that she is okay. But unfortunately, when it comes to Colossus, he was unable to follow Storm. And so he stopped by Psylocke's room to ask for her help, to use her powers as a way to kind of locate Storm. Unfortunately, Colossus was also seriously injured in the earlier chapters of this event, and those injuries are now playing a part when it comes to Colossus' health, because he just collapses right on top of Psylocke. Now, with him being in his armor form, he is very heavy and hard to move, and so Psylocke has no choice but to go ahead and call out for Rogue, who around this time had super strength, thanks to her absorbing Miss Marvel's powers. And so she was able to fly over and remove Colossus off the top of the body of Psylocke, but now you have the X-Men very worried about Colossus, because his injuries are now taking a turn to the worst when it comes to him surviving. But getting back over to Wolverine just real quickly, you have Wolverine realize that X-Factor had also been in the tunnels as well. Now we have to remember, when it came to X-Factor, like I said earlier, their main goal was to make sure that Charles Xavier's dream came to life. But what they also did was they pretended to be a group of people who would go out of their way to hunt down mutants and lock them up. Now, in reality, that was not true. That in reality, when it came to X-Factor, their goal was to help mutants get into better situations for their lives. And so when it came to Wolverine, he heard recent news about X-Factor being the original X-Men. He's kind of like, why in the world is the original X-Men going after their fellow mutants? Now, while he's going to the tunnels, he also picks up the scent of Jean Grey, and he realized that, oh my God, Jean Grey is alive. The new X-Men team have no idea that she is alive again. And so for Wolverine, this is the first moment he realized that she is alive. But getting back over to the X-Men, they're still trying to save the life of Colossus. The problem is, though, Colossus is in his metal form, and with him not being awake, he is unable to turn it off, which makes it hard for the X-Men to figure out what kind of injuries Colossus has. They have a hard time reading on what they can do to actually save his life. Now that is when Magneto steps in, because when Colossus is in his armor form, it's just a metal skin, and so Magneto is able to control metal. And so what Magneto is going to do is use his powers, but also the magnetic field of the earth, to kind of help him learn what kind of injuries Colossus has, but at the same time try to repair those injuries. Because again, Colossus is in his metal form, and Magneto should be able to bend the metal of Colossus, like his actual skin, to repair his body. Except once he's done doing all of that, well, Colossus wakes up happy and feels somewhat better, but the reason why he feels better because he cannot feel the pain of his body. And the reason why? Because now he is paralyzed. Something went wrong when it came to Magneto trying to use his powers to fix Colossus. Now we do jump back over to Storm, and with Storm, it's really more the idea of she's scared to be a leader of the X-Men, but also she is the leader of the Morlocks as well. Because we have to remember, in the earlier chapters of X-Men comics, when Storm first appeared, she actually fought against Callisto, and Callisto was the original leader of the Morlocks. Except you have the two characters fight against each other, Storm won, and Storm became the leader of both groups, except Storm says, I will be with the X-Men more often than with the Morlocks, and so she left Callisto in charge as long as she is away. Either way, you have Callisto trying to chase down Storm because she realized that Storm is beginning to doubt herself as a leader, not just for the X-Men, but also for the Morlocks as well. And so you have Callisto say, you just can't rabbit your way out of this. Other words, meaning that you just can't ditch all your problems because things got too tough. Listen, that's life, but also that's life as a leader. You're gonna have more problems than other people. But the thing is, I realize you are a great leader, and I feel like the only reason why you're so scared is because you had currently lost your powers. And that's the thing. You don't need your powers to be a great leader. It's your actions that show other people why you are a great leader. And so once you have Callisto being able to talk to Storm, you have Storm kind of realize that Callisto is most likely right. But getting back over to Wolverine, you have Wolverine being able to find Sabertooth. Now, like I said earlier, this is the first time these two characters had ever fought against each other in Marvel Comics. Not in the actual main Marvel Universe timeline, I'm saying in the real world, this was the first book that fans picked up and said, oh my god, it's cool to see Wolverine and Sabertooth fight against each other. But on top of that, you had Sabertooth hinted the idea that these two characters know each other very well. They have a long history with one another. Now, this is also the moment where you have Sabertooth tell Wolverine and us, the readers, that they were sent there by their leader. The Marauders were sent there by Mr. Sinister, and that is it. And then you have the two characters fight against each other. Now, Wolverine realized that Sabertooth had a hostage, and that would be the healer. And so you have Wolverine realize he has to get rid of Sabertooth to save the life of Healer. And so what Wolverine does, he realized the area they're in right now has a very weak support system that keeps up the ceiling from collapsing on top of them. And so once you have Wolverine get rid of those support system that are above them, well, the entire roof caves in right on top of Sabertooth, which gives Wolverine the chance to grab Healer and get the heck out of there. Now, we were told back in the New Mutant chapter that there is a tunnel of the Morlock tunnels that lead back over to the X-Mansion. And matter of fact, you have Wolverine take that tunnel to get back over to the X-Men with the Healer in his arms. Now, here's the thing, because as soon as Wolverine arrives, he tells Rogue that he had picked up the scents of the New Mutants. And remember, in their chapter, they went into the city using the Morlock tunnels to find their missing teammates, but they missed every single member of the Marauders, and so they got very lucky. except for the X-Men, they believe the New Mutants are currently possibly in the tunnels of the Morlocks facing other members of the Morlocks, or the Marauders, sorry. Now, as soon as Wolverine arrives at the tail end of the tunnel to hand Healer over to Rogue, that is when Rogue realized there is some kind of energy blast about to hit them in the tunnel. And so she was able to grab Wolverine and Healer and get far back enough so that they would not be hit by the blast. But the tunnel does cave in. And so if the New Mutants or the X-Men are still in the Morlock tunnels, they don't have a way back home right now. They have to find a different way home. But this What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up our coverage over the Mutant Massacre event with the final 3 chapters for this crossover. Now remember, this was the first X-Men crossover that was ever done in Marvel Comics. Now with that being said, remember, the Mutant Massacre was basically a group of characters known as the Marauders went into the tunnels of the Morlocks and began to kill off Morlocks left and right, no matter if they were a man, a woman, or a child. They were being killed off no matter what. And so X-Men and X-Factor got involved in the middle of this event, and also Thor as well. Now, when it comes to the final 3 chapters of this crossover, another Marvel superhero is also going to be involved in this event, and that would be Daredevil. Yes, you heard that right. Daredevil is going to fight against Sabertooth to be part of the Mutant Massacre event. Now we do get into X-Factor number 11 for the first chapter of today's video. Now remember, when it comes to X-Factor, around this point in time, it was the original 5 X-Men: Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and Angel. And the reason why these 5 characters came back together as a new team is because they all left the X-Men hoping the new X-Men would be able to carry out Charles Xavier's dream. Unfortunately, they believe the new X-Men are not doing a good job with that, and so they went out of their way to form a new team known as X-Factor. Now when it comes to the public, X-Factor is better known as a group of people who go out of their way to hunt mutants down. Matter of fact, they pretend to be humans who are hunting down mutants, but in reality they are a group of characters who are going out of their way to help mutants get in better situations, to get out of bad spots in their lives, to actually help mutants out. And so it's them saying, at least we are able to say we're still carrying on Charles Xavier's dream. And so as we dive into X-Factor issue number 11, we do pick up with Beast and Iceman, who are currently trying their best to get some more survivors of the Morlocks back to their base to get them some medical help. But the problem is though, on their way there, they run into some Morlocks who believe that Beast and Iceman are actually Marauders. Of course, the group of characters who are currently going around killing off different members of the Morlocks. And so you do have Beast and Iceman try to say, hey, we are not Marauders, we are X-Factor, but that was also a mistake because again, when it comes to the public, they believe that X-Factor is a group of characters who go out of their way to hunt down mutants. But in reality, they go out of their way to help get mutants out of bad situations. But the problem is, right now, this group of Morlocks are not trying to listen at all. And so they continue to attack Beast and also Iceman. Now we do pick up with Cyclops and Jean Grey. Now remember, when it comes to these two characters, Cyclops and Jean Grey continue on in the tunnels to look for their lost friend Artie, who was a trainee to become the next member of X-Factor. Now they were able to find him, and so they're trying to get the heck out of there. Now here's the thing, because when it comes to Artie, he cannot communicate like how most people do. Unfortunately, he has to rely on his mutant ability ability, which is that he is able to project different kinds of images as a way to say, hey, this is what I am thinking about. And sometimes he's able to access other people's minds to see what they're actually thinking. Now, when it comes to Cyclops and Jean Grey, they're trying to get Angel back over to their base to get some medical help because he was also injured in an earlier chapter. Now, here's the thing though, guys, because Angel and Jean Grey around this time were about to fall in love with one another. Now, that might sound weird to you, but the thing is, ever since Stan Lee days, Angel has always tried to make moves on Jean Grey ever when she is single. And right now, she is single. And the reason why? Because Cyclops is he is married to Madeline Pryor. And matter of fact, they have a son together. And so Cyclops is taken, Jean Grey is a free agent, and Angel is trying to get with her. And with all that being said, because Angel thought that he was going to die, he told Artie, hey, if I do die, make sure you tell Jean Grey this right here, that I loved her. And so even though you have two heroes trying to get Angel, who's still alive, back to their base to give him some medical help, is Artie saying, if he does not make it, I'm going to tell you right now that he really did love Jean Grey. And that's huge. Now, you do hear Cyclops and Jean Grey hear some noise, and they're kind of like, what in the world is going on? And they come to find out it is Iceman and Beast currently fighting against a group of characters who are better known as the Tunnelers. Now, when it comes to the Tunnelers, they are a group of Morlocks who are kind of like the hotheads of the Morlocks. And most of the time, they keep to themselves because of their attitudes. Now, here's the thing, because even though you have Beast and Iceman trying to say they are actually innocent, these guys are not trying to hear them at all. And so it does lead into a battle where Cyclops has to get involved and clear everything up. Like, yes, we are X Factor. Yes, we are known as mutant hunters. But in reality, we're not mutant hunters. We're here to help mutants out. So please stop attacking us, listen, and let's get the heck out of here, because you have survivors, I have survivors who need some medical help, and we have a place that can give them some medical help. Now, with all that being said, that is when they feel a huge amount of heat coming their way. And we already know why, because in the earlier chapters of Mutant Massacre, Thor felt like it was a good idea to give the folks who had died in the tunnels, the Morlocks, a Viking funeral to burn their bodies up, not alive, but burn their bodies. Either way, he does burn their bodies. All that heat, all that flames are going through the tunnels right now to kill off all the dead bodies of the Morlocks. And so it's our heroes saying we have to get inside before those flames are able to grab us and kill us off. Now, once you have our heroes being able to get back to their base, the X Factor base, and give the Morlocks who survived the attack of the Marauders some medical help, they send Angel away to a nearby hospital. Now, the reason why Angel is able to go away and not the others is because word got out that Warren Warrington, aka Angel, is for some reason funding the entire operations of X Factor, and that seems weird to the public because Angel is a well-known mutant. And so why would a mutant fund mutant hunters to go after his own race? That looks really bad right now when it comes to Angel and X Factor. Either way, because the world knows that he is Angel, but on top of that, he is funding X Factor, they are able to send him to a nearby hospital. Except when it comes to the rest of the Morlocks, it's kind of like, no, we can't send them anywhere because humans hate mutants a lot. At least with Warren and his money, he'll be able to get the medical he needs. But when it comes to these guys, they don't have that kind of money. And so unfortunately, they cannot get the medical attention, but also the protection from humans who might hate them. But you also have the Tunnelers leave as well. Now, the reason why the Tunnelers leave is because they feel like they cannot trust X Factor at all. They feel like X Factor is actually going to trick them and give them over to the police. Because remember, X Factor is known as a group of mutant hunters. And so they're saying even though Cyclops and other Morlocks were able to clear the name of X-Factor, the tunnelers still do not believe them at all. And so they leave. Now, there was a crowd of people who were surrounding the building, but you have the tunnelers say that they were just a cleaning crew and they just got done cleaning, so they're going to go ahead and leave, which they do. Except when they do go to a nearby pier, they are bothered by a group of thugs. Now, these thugs were just harassing them at first, except once you have these thugs, these regular humans realize the tunnelers are a group of mutants. They go out of their way and try to kill off the tunnelers. And it does lead into a huge battle where you do have some members of the tunnelers get shot and killed, and some members of the thugs are killed off by the tunnelers. And so just like that, this had turned into a bloody match. Now we do see that Cyclops and Jean Grey are currently waiting in the waiting room to see how bad is Angel's injuries, except while waiting, they hear the latest news report about what is happening with the tunnelers. And Cyclops and Jean Grey, they know what in the world is going on. And so they begin to freak out, kind of like, we have to go and we have to stop the tunnelers right now before more innocent people are killed off. Now, we do pick up with a character known as Abraham Lincoln Heroes. Now, when it comes to this character, he was actually paralyzed from the neck down, and so unfortunately, he is trapped inside an iron lung machine to keep him alive. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain his powers at all, really. The only thing you need to know about this guy in this one single page is that Apocalypse does arrive and says when it comes to Abraham, he has a great amount of power that can be used for greatness down the road. And so as soon as he arrives, you have Apocalypse go ahead and teleport him and Abraham out of the hospital, and we have no idea where they went to, but Apocalypse does say that Abraham will be his second horseman. And remember, in the earlier chapters, we saw Apocalypse get his first horseman, and so now he only needs 2 more. And so when Cyclops and Jean Grey arrive at the scene, they do see the tunnelers fighting against the police officers. Now here comes the problem though, because when it comes to police officers, even though they just have guns, those guns are able to shoot and kill people. And so some members of the tunnelers are shot and killed, which of course upset tunnelers even more to attack the police officers. Now, while you have both parties fighting against each other, you do have Cyclops and Jean Grey step in. Here comes the problem though, because even though our heroes do step in, Cyclops has to use his powers on the tunnelers to stop them, because their powers are way more dangerous than the ones who have guns, the police officers. And so when it came to Cyclops, he had to use his optic beam, and he shot the leader of the group of the tunnelers into the water. And because his water was electric based, well, of course, he kind of died as soon as his body hit the water. And so he's gone, and other members of the tunnelers are also gone. Now, when it comes to Mask, she is now the last surviving member of that particular group. But Cyclops now feels bad about what he had to do to stop this war between the two sides here. But Jean Grey said you had no choice, because if you did not make a move like you did, he would have killed the police officers, and we would have more hate on us because we are mutants, and humans already hate us a lot, and that's a problem right there. Now, the last couple pages really do pick up on 2 different things happening. The first is that we pick up with a character known as Boom Boom. Now, when it comes to Boom Boom, she has the ability to basically make small energy bombs that can cause huge explosions. Now, when it came to Boom Boom, around this point in time in Marvel Comics, she was actually a thief for a guy who would just only get girl thieves only. Now, when it comes to Boom Boom, she's tired of working for him. And so she says she's going to leave his group and go on her own, which of course kind of opens the door for her to join the X-Men, X-Factor, or possibly the New Mutants. But at the very end of the last page, we come to find out that Cyclops and Jean Grey, they do get word of how severe the injuries are for Angel. And we come to find out Angel might have to lose his wings. But unfortunately, the next chapter, we have to jump over to Daredevil as he fights against Sabertooth. And so getting into Daredevil number 238, we do pick up with Sabertooth going after a group of teenagers. Now, the reason why he is doing this because by this point in the actual storyline, most of the Morlocks, really all of the Morlocks, are gone completely. They're dead, or they're with the X-Men or X-Factor, or they have ran away. And so the tunnels of the Morlocks are basically up for grab. And so you have different groups of gang members or teenagers just trying to claim their own area in the tunnels of the Morlocks. And when it comes to Sabertooth, well, he was still down there. And so he's kind of like, listen, if you're down here, you're free game. That means I can go ahead and kill you off if I wanted to. And so you have Sabertooth begin to attack a group of teenagers. Now they are able to get away except for one, a young girl. Now we can kind of see right here that when it comes to Sabertooth, his mind is like an animal. But sometimes he still wants to be with someone. He still wants to have a mate. And so when it comes to this young girl, he looks at her as like a possibility of becoming a mate. Now, we do jump over to Daredevil, and when we do, it's really more of Matt Murdock just going around Hell's Kitchen to kind of give us a look at how bad Hell's Kitchen truly is. And honestly, it's pretty bad. Now, he kind of gives us some examples of two random dogs fighting against each other and some other crimes happening here and there. Now, that is the moment where he realized that he is near a crime, where you have two thugs who are currently trying to rob a fellow. And so you have Matt Murdock jump in as Daredevil to stop these two thugs. Now, this fight does not last that long because, again, these guys are just regular guys. These guys are very easy for a hero to actually take down. But once he does that, well, it does lead into a conversation between him and the guy that he just saved, where we kind of find out that this guy is very upset with Matt Murdock. And the reason why, because in a previous storyline, Matt had to fight against a character known as Nuke. And when they fought against each other, it did cause a lot of damage to a Pacific neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen, where a lot of stores were technically destroyed. And one of the stores that was destroyed was this guy right here that Matt Murdock just saved from these thugs. And so when it comes to this guy, he's kind of like, I don't really care that you saved me, because even though you did, your last battle just ruined my life, ruined my future. I have no store anymore. I'm just basically ruined. And Matt kind of realized the guy does have the right to be upset. And so you do have Matt return his wallet, and Matt walks away from the conversation. Now we do jump over to two random siblings. Now the girl, her name is Darla, and her brother Butch. Now when it comes to these two kids, they're just watching television, minding their business, and also playing pranks on one another. Except that is the moment where their father comes home. Now when their father comes home, he's kind of like the guy we saw earlier, where he does express the idea that he does not like superheroes at all. Now we have no idea if their father is the same guy we saw earlier that Matt had just saved. All we know is that this guy in the shadows is also expressing the same thing about the idea that his kids will not be praising or looking up to superheroes. The only heroes they should look up to are your usual heroes. So like police officers or firefighters, and that is it. Now with all that being said, he did tell his kids to go to the library, but they better not hang out with that gang again. And apparently they go out at night sometimes and hang out with a group of kids who are part of a gang. except they don't do what their father had asked them to do. Instead, they actually go hang out with the gang of kids in the old parts of the Morlock tunnels. Because like I said earlier, with the Morlocks no longer being around, their tunnels are up for grabs. And so you do have different gangs, different people trying to claim different parts of the Morlock tunnels. Now when it comes to this gang of children, they are confronted by Sabertooth. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, even though his job is technically done, in his mind it's not done, because you still have people constantly coming into the sewers of the Morlock tunnels. And so you do have Sabertooth down with the idea of killing off these kids, except you didn't have Butch, the kid we met earlier, say that this part of town, Hell's Kitchen, is protected by Daredevil. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, he never heard of Daredevil, but he's kind of like, you say this guy named Daredevil protects this area. Is he an actual challenge? Oh, he is? Well, you know what? Now I want to fight him. And matter of fact, it doesn't take Sabertooth that long to be able to find Daredevil. And so once he does, the next few pages is really more of these two characters fighting against each other. Now when it comes to their battle, like I said, it does last for a few pages, but when it comes to Daredevil, he realized that Sabertooth is kind of like a wild animal, just going all over the place. His fighting styles is kind of hard for Matt to pick up, to learn how to dodge, but to also how to attack. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, he realized that most of his usual tricks are not going to work on Daredevil because of his radar. And so these two characters are trying to adapt to one another in their own kind of unique ways. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, he kind of like, you know what? I'm done fighting you. It's time for me to get the heck out of here. And so you have Sabertooth go back into the sewers, but you also have Matt Murdock follow Sabertooth into the sewers. And so the battle continues on in there. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, the reason why he went into the sewers was him kind of hoping that he may be able to lose Daredevil. But the thing is, he feels like it's too dark down there that he'll be able to use the darkness to lose Matt, but Matt is blind. But Matt does rely on his other senses to help guide him through the tunnels. And so unfortunately, when it comes to Sabertooth, his master plan is not going to work. The battle continues on. Now as they fight, they go back to the same area where Sabertooth held that young girl at. And so Matt knows that Sabertooth has a hostage. And so this is him saying, okay, I have to go out of my way to save her life. Now as the fight goes on, that is when Sabertooth realized that Matt Murdock is blind, because a dead body, one of the Morlocks, does land right next to Daredevil. And usually you're just able to look at a dead body and be all like, okay, they're dead. Except for Matt, it's kind of his other senses trying to help tell him, hey, this is a dead body next to you. And so Sabertooth was able to realize at that point, oh, you're blind. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, he does go after the young girl that he had kidnapped earlier, and he does slash her throat. Now we're left to believe that she is dead, except she's not dead. But for right now, we don't know that. When it comes to Matt, he asks Sabertooth one question. Are you happy now? Is your hunger satisfied that you were able to kill somebody? But because Sabertooth's like a wild animal, he's kind of like, no, I hunger for more. Now, he does not stay to fight against Daredevil because he realized he cannot win that battle, and so he runs away. But when it comes to Matt, we do get some good news. The young girl got her throat cut earlier actually survived. And she can kind of tell us here that when it comes to Sabertooth, even though he is a wild animal, he is still looking for a companion, somebody to love. He feels lonely, but that hunger inside of him to kill is just too big for him to control. And so this chapter ends on that note right there. Now, the last chapter of the Mutant Massacre takes place in Uncanny X-Men number 213. Now, with this chapter right here, we do pick up with Psylocke at first. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, around this point in time, she was not part of the X-Men, nor the New Mutants. She was kind of just there to be there. They were trying to figure out what her placement would actually be. And so currently she is helping out the X-Men, but she's not an official X-Men. Now, Charles Xavier is gone, but Magneto took his place as the headmaster of the school. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, she's trying to use Cerebro as a way to check in on every single person at the mansion. That means the X-Men, Moira McTaggart, and all survivors of the Morlocks who were gathered there of the Mutant Massacre. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, she also kind of reminds us of different things going on when it comes to the X-Men. For example, Kitty Pryde. Because remember, at the very beginning of the Mutant Massacre, Kitty Pryde was hit in the back by one of the Marauders, which of course messed up her powers. And so unfortunately, she is unable to stop phasing. And so she's now stuck inside a machine until they are able to figure out how to turn her power off. Because if they don't, they have no idea what could possibly happen to her. There is something else I do want to mention. I know that somebody out there is going to actually bring this up, but it's basically about the idea that around this point, Psylocke was kind of in love with Cypher, and this was one of those weird relationships we had in the early days of Marvel Comics where you had a grown adult being in love with a child or a teenager, and for some reason you are supposed to be okay with this. And so when it came to Psylocke, she was kind of in love with Cypher, and he was kind of in love with her as well. Now, we do jump back over to the X-Men, who are currently right now in the sewers because there is a tunnel that goes right underneath the X-Mansion that leads back over to the Morlock tunnels. Now, when it comes to our heroes here, they're very upset about the idea of what happened recently in the sewers. Somebody had burned all the dead bodies of the Morlocks. Now, we already know who that was. That was Thor, because he felt like it would be a great thing to give these guys a Viking funeral. And so he burned all their bodies to get rid of them, but to also bury them. And so when it comes to the X-Men, they had no idea that Thor did that, because Thor only talked to X-Factor, not to the X-Men. And so they're wondering who in the world did this? Who burned all the dead bodies? Now, they also realize the New Mutants are missing, but the New Mutants had also used the tunnels of the Morlocks to go into the city. And we saw that in their chapter. And really, their chapter only had a small part when it comes to the actual Mutant Massacre. But the thing is, now you have Magneto freaking out because now his students are missing, and the only trail they had is now just wiped away clean. And so they have no idea how to find the New Mutants. And now you didn't have Psylocke come in with Cerebro to basically say that what she can do is use Cerebro to hopefully locate a New Mutant or to locate a Marauder, to gain information from the Marauder to hopefully learn more about them, but to also see if that Marauder may have an idea what happened to the New Mutants. And so she does use her abilities with Cerebro. When she does that, she tries to read the mind of, well, a Marauder who is apparently nearby the X-Mansion. Now, we're not told which Marauder it is, but apparently this one right here has some high defenses when it comes to his mind being protected by psychics. Now we kind of find out the mind that she read belonged to Sabertooth. Now when it comes to Sabertooth, remember that he is part of the Marauders, but when it comes to Sabertooth, his mind is well trained, it's well protected. And so a lot of times, if you're not a well trained psychic, most of the time you will not be able to read his mind. And so he was able to send a feedback that did make her go a tad bit crazy. Now, once she's able to regain herself and realize that Sabertooth is trying to kill her, her main goal is to keep him busy long enough until the rest of the X-Men are able to show up and to help her out when it comes to defeating Sabertooth. And so after a few pages, you then do have the other X-Men arrive to help her. Now, when it comes to the X-Men arriving, it really is more of Wolverine fighting Sabertooth round 2. Yes, you do have other members of the X-Men help out, but the main two characters who are currently fighting is Wolverine and Sabertooth. Now, while the two characters are fighting against each other, Psylocke realized that if she is able to read his mind now, he'll be too distracted when it comes to trying to fight against Wolverine. And so with them being distracted, she should be able to enter his mind and gain the information the X-Men want to know about the Marauders. And so she goes ahead and does her work. And so just like that, she is able to get a lot of information from his mind. And then once she is done, Wolverine is able to get rid of Sabertooth. Technically, the two of them do fall off a cliff into the ocean, and Wolverine wants to go ahead and continue to fight against Sabertooth to, kill him off. But the X-Men say he's gone. Now, when it comes to Wolverine, he wants to make sure that Sabertooth is gone. But they're like, nah, dude, he's gone. And matter of fact, Psylocke powers say that he is gone. So let's go ahead and just regroup back at the X Mansion. Now, the final page of this story is going to be really more of Psylocke joining the X-Men, because thanks to her, they were able to get a lot of information out of the mind of Sabertooth, to learn more about the Marauders, to learn who is in charge of the Marauders. And so because of that right there, it made her become a member of the X-Men. And that is the end of the Mutant Massacre. Now, there were some plot lines we did not close off when it comes to this ending, but those plot lines do end in later chapters in their own separate books. So for X Factor, for New Mutants, X-Men, we didn't really cover Thor's stuff or really Matt Murdock's Daredevil stuff, but again, all those plot lines got handled in later chapters. Either way, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.